If I have to say anything, is that this was probably one of, if not the best episode of My Hero Academia to date for now. Because you never know, another episode might surpass it, but this was for sure Shoto Todoroki's episode, as well as Toya Todoroki slash Dabi's episode, as we get more insight into Dabi and his crazy ass mind, how All For One attempted to use Dabi and how that failed. Because keep this in mind, All For One is someone who will want to keep people in check, wants to make sure that whoever he wants in control is able to be controlled and has contingencies should they stray away from whatever plan he wants them to be in, regardless if they succeed or fail. The thing with Toya, though, or I guess we'll go Dabi in this case, the thing with Dabi is that ever since that night that Toya's father, Endeavor, decided not to show up to see what he wanted to show him was the blue flames, that sort of caused them to completely have a mental breakdown. And obviously the whole flames thing, it's a lot brutal than I thought they would show. So I find it interesting how they presented this portion, as well as showing All For One being there when Toya was burnt up. But moving on to when he woke up and he's in that daycare thing, like, yeah, he wants to go back to his family, especially when realizing it's been 3 years since that incident. Now, obviously learning about, well, the truth and being reminded that he is a failure, it shows in such an interesting portrayal about his mental issues in regarding of being a failure, being reminded of all those flashbacks of just terrible moments when he's reminded he is a failure to his father, kind of caused him to completely go off, and that was obviously not All For One's plan, as well as obviously the doctor's explaining all of this. But the doctor also mentions, like, Toya was never supposed to survive after a month. Like, the body was completely destroyed. He should have been dead. So when in season 2 he appears, it basically causes All For One and the doctor to be confuzzled because they didn't think he would survive, which we do learn more that Dabi had went back, he wanted to see his father, only to see that, well, nothing's changed. And even then, it's like, they don't even acknowledge him, his existence. It's like, yeah, they moved on. But I mean, dude, it's been 3 years. Not to mention, your dad at this point was a piece of shit. And he was obviously wanting Shoto to become the perfect hero to surpass All Might. So that dedication of your death only amplified it. But obviously, that's aside. So he gives like a prayer. So this is more of a signification, a little symbolism of Dabi's birth and Toya's true death before we get into the fight. I like how the sidekicks are pretty much therefore is to help Shoto beat Toya, because at this point Dabi's flames are extremely dangerous because they're even melting the All Might statue, which is a feat of its own. But yeah, Toya is using moves from Endeavor, has shown that he had been copying Endeavor's moves, trying to perfect them, and that, yeah, he's pretty much on a very dangerous scale. He is showing he hates his brother for obvious reasons, because he's considered the perfect son, while he's the failure son. So, yeah, he's taking this personally, and Shoto kind of just lets him let loose all this frustration. Because in Shoto's mind, he's happy that at least Toya did acknowledge him and was thinking of him. Because, keep this in mind, Shoto was excluded from anything from his childhood. He was just train. So all of the social stuff that he would have picked up if he were in school was not there because of Endeavor. He had to learn that with Class 1A. And seeing all the development from everything before this season, all building together for this moment to show Shoto like his power, and giving us a little glimpse of how his power works, being a combination of fire and ice together to essentially make a middle ground where it doesn't burn but it also doesn't freeze, something around those lines, considering that our little electricity friend is able to touch the flames without burning himself. And I like the little callback to what Deku had told him in Season 2, where Shoto now acknowledges that, yes, this is his power. And in a very cool move, he was finally able to beat Dabi with a single punch. And the visuals of Kid Toya and Kid Shoto is just amazing. Like, visually speaking, this episode was 11 out of 10 in terms of what we're seeing. And the story for this, I can guarantee you of one thing. If Shoto was the main character instead of Deku, I can guarantee you this would have been the climactic finisher move to end the final war if this was the case. Where we'd have brother versus brother, and in a very poetic way, he finally calmed his flames. Like, he freezed everything. Because Dabi noticed his hand was not burning anymore, which means that his flames were neutralized. And obviously this was a problem. And just as Shoto was, running out and needed to restart his process to get to this point, the sidekicks have come in, protect him, buying him enough time to land that, to create that whole thing again and be able to throw the punch that essentially knocked them down. And basically, in a poetic way, he was able to cool off Dabi's hatred. Dabi's flames represent the hatred, and the coldness represents Shoto's love for Dabi. So he was able to completely neutralize that hatred that was spreading around with his love in a symbolic sense. At least that's how I'm interpreting it. But overall, it is one of the best episodes. It is for sure the best Shoto Todoroki episode. Especially we get another callback to, I believe it was season 4 or 5, that they were talking about the finishing move kind of thing that represents who you are as a hero. And this one was definitely Shoto's final ultimate move.